Tonight, the NBA is not just a league, it's a living, breathing drama. Brothers reuniting, billion-dollar contract questions, injury shakeups, and preseason sparks that could rewrite the entire season. If you thought the offseason was over, think again, because in the last 24 hours, everything changed. Stay with me as I unpack the headlines that will decide who has momentum, who's in trouble, and who's quietly building a dynasty.
What just happened and who's at the center? In the last day, the NBA handed us a headline that reads like a movie subplot. The Milwaukee Bucks have inked a deal that reunites the Antetokounmpo family on the same active roster by signing Alex Antetokounmpo, Giannis and Thanasis' younger brother, to a two-way contract, meaning the Bucks now technically carry 3 Antetokounmpo brothers across the same organization. Who is Alex and why does this matter? Alex is a 24-year-old wing who has bounced through the G League and overseas pro leagues, and while he hasn't yet appeared in a regular season NBA game, this signing instantly changes the Bucks' locker room narrative and marketability. It's a headline that's impossible to ignore. When did this happen? The report broke in the last 24 hours and it landed as teams are finalizing preseason and depth charts heading into opening night. Why does the league care? Because family storylines sell, chemistry matters, and the Bucks are signaling they want to deepen their bench and their cultural identity around Giannis.
How could 3 brothers on one roster influence on-court dynamics? How will having 3 Antetokounmpo brothers on the same team change basketball decisions? Practically, Alex's signing gives the Bucks a young athletic option they can develop in short bursts, using two-way flexibility to shuttle in between the G League and the NBA roster. Who benefits? Giannis benefits from a supportive family presence, the coaching staff gains a low-risk developmental project, and the front office can lean into a story that bonds fans. When might Alex see minutes and where? Expect early mop-up minutes in preseason and garbage time during regular season, unless he forces his way in with defense and energy. The Bucks won't rush him, but the narrative value is immediate. Why does this matter for opponents? Scouts will now have to add one more Antetokounmpo profile to their report cards.
Who else shook the NBA headlines and why should fans be paying attention? At nearly the same time, whispers and official updates have swirled around the Clippers and their relationship with a reported $300 million sponsorship deal involving aspiration, and that ripple touches star players and league governance. Who is involved? Kawhi Leonard's situation is the focal point because a league review is examining whether sponsorship structures or timing favored a star in ways that could circumvent compensation rules. What's new? Reports surfaced indicating the NBA had approved certain financial arrangements prior to a separate aspiration endorsement with a player, introducing complexity to the investigation. When did this evolve? These details emerged within the last 24 hours as the league and media parsed documents and timelines. Why should fans care? Because the outcome could set a precedent. If teams and corporate partners can leverage sponsorship timing to bend compensation rules, the competitive landscape and cap fairness could be permanently altered.
How would a ruling here reshape the power balance? If the NBA determines that a sponsorship approval effectively circumvented salary cap intent, what happens? The league could levy fines, force contract adjustments, or even strip draft assets in extreme cases. Who loses? Possibly franchise credibility and owners who relied on creative deals. Who wins? Other teams that obeyed more conservative cap practices. When might this land? Legal and league investigations tend to stretch, but initial findings published now create pressure for a swift resolution before regular season storylines drown it out. Why does timing matter for the season? Because contract structures and max deal justifications are used every summer. A ruling could chill similar mega deals or encourage stricter transparency across the board. Which teams flashed early promise in the last 20 hours, and how did that show on the floor? On the court, preseason and highlight reels from the past day show certain teams already staking claims to early advantages. Who stood out? Young phenoms and surprising rotation calls popped up on highlight compilations shared across league channels. For example, extended highlights rolling out for teams like the Celtics, Nuggets, and Clippers revealed both dazzling offense and concerning defensive lapses. What happened in those clips? Sequence by sequence, you saw clutch shot-making, quick defensive rotations, and a handful of plays that reveal how coaches might deploy new lineups once games count. When did viewers see these plays? Highlight reels and full-game snippets from yesterday and today began circulating within the last 20 hours on league and sports networks. Why should that sway your preseason expectations? Because previews and clips give us evidence of chemistry or the lack of it, and teams that gel fast are the ones that often surprise in the early months.
Who's injured? And how will those injuries tilt the early season? Injury news has already begun leaking out as teams finalize rosters. Certain noteworthy starters are expected to miss time, while others are week to week with nagging issues. Who's out or limited? Media outlets in the last day have reported on starter absences and precautionary minutes for superstars as teams manage workload heading into the real season. What does this mean practically? Rotations will compress, bench players will be thrust into bigger roles, and early records may not reflect true team strength. When will we see the impact? Immediately. The first handful of regular season games will expose how well teams cover injuries. Why does this matter at the narrative level? Because early wins or losses can define media headlines and a team's confidence, influencing trade chatter before the calendar even flips to December.
How are coaches reacting in real time, and who's changing their playbook? Coaches are reacting to personnel shifts by adjusting minutes, trying new lineup permutations, and emphasizing defense or pace depending on matchups. Who's making the boldest changes? A few head coaches have already signaled that preseason minutes will be used as experiments, starting rookies at point of attack, testing small ball lineups, and giving veterans night off rest to manage load. What's at stake? The choices in these next weeks will either validate a coach's vision or force rapid course corrections. When will we know which coaches nailed it? The verdict starts to arrive in the first 2 weeks of the regular season. Look at how teams handle back-to-backs and late-game execution. Why does coaching narrative matter?
because the way coaches adapt to injuries, new signings, and unexpected playmakers determines whether talent converts into wins. Which young players are flashing upside that could make them household names? In the past 20 hours, several sophomore and rookie names have cropped up in highlight reels and scouting notes, prompting analysts to ask which youngsters will become breakout stars. Who to watch? Names cropping up in different outlets include high-ceiling wings and guards who delivered efficient scoring and surprising defensive instincts in limited looks. What evidence supports their breakout case? Quick scoring bursts, advanced stat improvements in preseason minutes, and coach comments praising maturation and effort. When might these players matter? If they sustain their efficiencies into the regular season, they could become rotation staples within weeks. Why should investors, fans, care? Because early breakout seasons often correlate to increased minutes, confidence, and eventual contract leverage.
How are veteran superstars conserving energy and who's already on minutes limits? Superstars are no longer expected to play every minute in preseason work, and within the last day, reports confirm planned minutes management for multiple high-profile names. Who's being managed? Elite veterans with long loads and past injuries are on minutes plans. Teams are announcing careful reintroductions to full contact and limited back-to-back exposure. What does it mean for their teams? Short-term, it's a lowered ceiling for explosive starts. Long-term, it's preservation of longevity and playoff viability. When will the real test come? In November, when the grind intensifies and contenders need star availability. Why is this a strategic pivot? Because modern load management aims to keep stars healthy for deep playoff runs, even if it costs the occasional regular season headline.
Who's quietly building depth through two-way deals and smart signings? Across the league, front offices are quietly layering talent via two-way deals, veteran minimums, and overseas pickups who can provide instant impact if needed. Who's being targeted? Young wigs and defensive forwards with upside who can morph into rotational pieces. What's the strategy? Use low-risk contracts to create a deep, flexible bench that can weather injuries and rest days. When will this pay off? The initiatives typically show their value in midseason surges or playoff push when start minutes are scarce. Why does depth win championships? Because depth allows coaches to maintain intensity and efficiency when starters rest or underperform. Championship teams often win because their bench matches up well in critical series. Which team narratives are shifting fastest, and what's the big swing factor? Narratives that seemed fixed 2 weeks ago are shifting on a dime. Roster moves, injuries, and investigations are converting preseason assumptions into fresh storylines. Who's climbing and who's slipping? Teams that were quietly expected to be sleepers are now seen as plausible dark horses due to chemistry and low-key signings, while higher-profile teams face clouded expectations because of off-court inquiries or injury questions. What's the swing factor? Depth and transparency. Teams that can plug gaps quickly and avoid negative PR storms keep their title dreams intact. When should we check the standings for a real picture? Look to the end of the first month. By then, early noises settle into trend lines. Why does this matter to the average fan? Because early betting lines, fantasy values, and social media narratives get set now, and those footholds last all season.
How should bettors and fantasy managers react in the short window ahead? If you're a bettor or a fantasy manager, the next 2 weeks are both an opportunity and a trap. Who should you target? Value players with increased minutes due to injuries and low-owned rookies showing efficiency spikes in preseason looks. What should you avoid? Chasing names based on a single highlight reel. Volume and role stability matter more than athleticism alone. When to act? Aggressively claim depth additions now while markets adjust. Be conservative with long-term predictions. Why is early action risky? Because coaches will still shuffle rotations. A hot start doesn't guarantee sustained usage. How to mitigate risk? Use short windows, weekly fantasy moves, or in-game prop bets rather than betting massive season outcomes on preseason data. Who in the media is framing the biggest storylines and how do their takes differ? The last 24 hours showed a split in media narratives. Some outlets emphasize the human story, the Antetokounmpo reunion and coaching adjustments, while others dig into governance and contractual implications like the Clippers' aspiration angle. Who's saying what? Outlets focused on on-court drama highlight energy, rotation, and chemistry. Investigative sports reporters are parsing documents and timelines that could affect league precedent. What's at stake? Public perception, future league policy, and how fans judge their team's front office. When will consensus emerge? Over the coming weeks, as more reporting and potential league responses clarify the facts. Why does media framing matter? Because it shapes fan sentiment and can pressure the league into swifter action or more transparent explanations. How do these fast-moving threads combine into one season-long thesis? String all these threads together, family signing, sponsorship scrutiny, injuries, hidden two-way depth, and rookie flashes, and you get a single thesis. The 2025-26 season will be decided not only by star talent, but by how well organizations navigate uncertainty. Who will win? The teams that blend star power with depth, operate transparently, and adapt to changing availability. What will define success? Consistency, health management, and clean front office operations that avoid league entanglements. When will we see which teams master this balancing act? By midseason, when rosters have weathered early storms and front offices make or decline to make trade moves. Why is this more interesting than prior years? Because the margins between contenders and pretenders have never been thinner.